your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record. Whether you're here in the Cayman Islands or whether you're listening overseas via the web. For the Record, as you know, is a show produced by Radio Cayman, its management, and its staff, specifically for you, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I am your host, Orit Connor. They also call me OC. And you can join me on For the Record on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. Our phone lines are always open, and there is always someone waiting to take your calls. That person is usually Miss Susan Watson, the lady with the beautiful voice. Of course, we can be reached on our toll-free number, which is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 or 949-6990. And, of course, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, then you can email us at fortherecord, one word, fortherecord at candw.ky. I want to say that I missed my show on Friday morning because I was off the island, and I really missed doing the show, but it was a situation where there was no other option. I needed to be, off island for a funeral, and again, I want to take this opportunity to say to Grace, my partner, to Lisa, Marlene, Debbie, Dawn, Flo, and Bernadette, that you want to cherish the memories of your mother, Mrs. Greta Webb. Cherish all of those good times that you had with her, that you were able to spend with her. Those are the things that you want to remember most, and those the thoughts that will keep you going and will keep her memory with you, all of the good things, that took place. Also, to Mr. Louis, who I'm sure wouldn't hear us this morning, who's still in Jamaica, as well. Married for 60 years, 60 years. And when you hear people talk about them in Jamaica, they were inseparable. Small place in Jamaica, Christiana, part in Mandeville, and everybody knows everybody there. You walk on the streets, everybody say good morning and stuff like that. Again, the way Cayman used to be and the way Cayman is in some parts as well, but we have changed somewhat because of the various influxes that we've had. But again, I want to say to the whole family, cherish the memories of your mother. So I really, really missed the show because I enjoy doing what I do. I enjoy it most when you enjoy it as well, and when you generate the conversations when we're unable to generate them. When you do that, and when we interact with each other and we share information and we try to be as factual, as we can, on this show as well. So I want to thank you all for allowing us into your homes, allowing us into your automobiles when you're driving into work, and allowing us into your workplaces when you get to work as well. And, of course, all of this could not be done without the support of our sponsors. And in this case, For the Record is brought to you by the Auto Spa. You can get a free vacuum with an express wash on Tuesdays at the Auto Spa. So brought to you by the Auto Spa. Let's take a quick look at the headlines in some of our newspapers, either online or hard copy. This morning, Caymanian Compass, flashback. What do we have there? LA on short break. That's important. We know, and we'll talk about that this morning, that the Premier, along with his support staff, is attending the Joint Ministerial Council in the United Kingdom, and that is a forum where all of the overseas territories meet to discuss issues with the Minister for the Overseas Territories, as well as other UK ministers and departments. So a lot will go on in that meeting, as well as in the margins of that meeting. Speed limit changes, recommended changes for speed limits on sections of several roads in Grand Cayman are expected to be addressed in Cabinet within the month. The government officials said the changes include reduced limits on most of West Bay Road and on parts of Franks Sound Road, and increased limits on North Sound Road between Butterfield Roundabout and Shaden Road. Yeah, I know many people who've gotten tickets on that section there, Compass Way, or I think it's called, because a lot of people don't realize the speed limit is 25 miles an hour on there, 25 miles an hour. So looking to increase that. What I would love to see is the 7 Mile Beach area, the old road, being pedestrianized a lot more. Lower the speed limit, because there's no need for anyone to go at a breakneck speed on that road. You want to do that, you have the bypass there, still the Tibbetts Highway, where the speeds are much faster if it is necessary for you to go faster. So that is something that we applaud, to have those changes come into effect. We are a small island, 22 miles long, and we're always in a hurry going somewhere. What are we rushing about? Leave home on time so that you don't have to rush for work. And, if you're out there in town, or anywhere else during the course of business, take your time and drive. There's no need for us to rush. Caymanian Compass, again, hedge funds, care, AIDS charities, quite a worthy cause. Looks like I'm trying to see how much money they raise there, but we do know that they do give money to various worthy charities in the Cayman Islands, and we want to applaud them for that. And they've been doing that for several years, years now as well. Take a look inside the paper. What's there? Former HSA chairman to apply for dismissal of charges. We don't comment much in terms of issues that are before the courts, at this time, so we won't do that. CNB robbery retrial date set. We can talk about that because we see where some high-profile trials, we see acquittals, and not necessarily because the persons may be innocent, but because of the way that the case has been prosecuted. Something that we have to seriously look at, in these islands, as well. Let's see what else. We have the editorial in the Caymanian Compass talking about learning from the Bahamas' latest bungle. And we have learned from the Bahamas before, and it talks about the fact that, when business was directed towards the Cayman Islands after the issues in the Bahamas. And this one basically talks about its immigration policies, which seem to be controversial, especially to CARICOM countries as well, who have expressed their concerns. Have expressed their concerns about the immigration policy. But we also have to bear in mind that it is the sovereign right of a country to protect its borders and to ensure that there is legal immigration. Otherwise, we see what we have to encounter later on. We see what the huge US of A, has to encounter. Of course, when we look at the case of Switzerland just recently, where they had an election and a referendum in relation to strict immigration policies, and that's a country that I think 8 million people, and out of 8 million people, something like a quarter of their population is an immigrant population. So again, you have to do what you have to do in order to protect your borders. When it comes to illegal immigration in the Cayman Islands, we have been extremely serious about that. You've seen us institute visa requirements for certain countries to control it, and I would venture to say that we have been extremely successful in doing that. So when it comes to illegal immigration, a country needs it has the right to exercise its sovereign authority, sovereign right to protect its borders, to protect those who are living here legally. And of course, when you look at the Bahamas has a huge problem, when it comes to illegal migration from neighboring countries, including Cuba, where you not only find Cubans traveling there, but people traveling from the Middle and Far East, going to Cuba to try to get into the United States as well. So again, those are issues that they have to deal with. I'm told that we have one caller online, so we're going to take that caller now. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, OC. This is Chris Saunders. Welcome back.
Hey, morning, Chris. How you doing? You got into 6 loves while I was gone?
No, actually, I dropped a good nightcap Saturday night on Huddle.
Oh, okay,
so
okay.
You know that one is coming, but that's fine.
Yeah, but you know Huddle, right? You don't want him to get have the last say in the night.
No, from my arrival, he said to me, "Boy, you can't come for your punishment." But he had no idea that 6 Love was going to sit in his lap that night.
Yeah,
yeah. That's how domino goes. You know that go.
Exactly.
I mean, well, I was calling about one thing, but I couldn't help but listen to the, I guess, whole immigration issue. And, I mean, just one little side comment on that before I mention what I was calling about this morning, is that people need to understand, as long as an economy isn't performing the way it's going to perform, there's always going to be rise in nationalism and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just a sad fact. I mean, you saw it even in the 2012 U.S. elections where people not only were going after illegal immigrants, but also legal immigration. People in the States who are on legitimate work permits and everything else. And as long as opportunities aren't available to the nationals in any country, they're always going to be lashing out against the people who they basically see as coming in and taking from them, rightfully so.
Precisely.
What is theirs. So, I mean, that is a fact of life. And what the government does need to do is just try to just make sure that they keep try to at least promote opportunities for Caymanian, which unfortunately this government has a failed record on. But I'm not going to take this up. It's December. I'm going to be nice. One of the things I wanted to just raise quickly was the whole UK beneficial ownership. And
yes.
What I kind of find weird is that thing has died in the United Kingdom, but yet we find nothing on this side where it's even being reported or covered.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, David Cameron, that is dead. His own caucus has basically killed it. I don't think it has even reached the UK Parliament at this point. And from what I understand from some of my people on that side, it's going absolutely nowhere. So again, this is one of the things that the UK was trying to push on us, and sure enough, they can't even push it in their own country.
And we see where Bermuda has rebuffed them on that as well. Their Minister of Finance, Bob Richards, there was a story in the Royal Gazette about him basically. How should I put this now? Anyway, he wasn't kind to David Cameron when he was over there in relation to what Bermuda intended to do as far as beneficial ownership was concerned and the register.
You themselves have basically chased it away also. I mean, the European Union has basically said, listen, this not going to work. You know what I mean? And it's kind of just weird when we see Europe pushing against it. We have the UK themselves pushing against their own thing. And then pretty much here we are in Cayman, as usual. This government is looking to, hi guys, have a good day at school. Love you all. Sorry, that's dropping the kids to school.
Okay.
Yeah. And here we have a government that's, quick out there to push consultation to the private sector. I mean, we just basically waste people time trying to promote this kind of crap inside the Cayman Islands.
As an individual who is, closely involved with international finance as well as local finance, what potential damage could having such a register and exposing such information due to the Cayman Islands, and at the same time, yet we see locally sometimes that is necessary to know who beneficial ownerships of companies are, because we see, right now in one of the headlines in the papers, I believe has some connection with that issue. How do you balance the two?
Well, I tell you what, I mean, and this has always been the million-dollar question. Back maybe 10 plus years ago, the biggest issue against the Cayman Islands being pushed by the OECD and everything else was harmful tax competition. Basically, they're saying that, our kind of system is bad for competition. It's natural for us to charge taxes and all that kind of stuff. Yet you look in states like New York now where they have like 10 tax-free zones where you basically pay no taxes to encourage business. So if anything, the Cayman Islands model has actually helped those countries. I mean, you cannot expect to be sitting in a country that have these high welfare states, and then they're taxing their own people 40-50% of their earnings. In some cases, like even in France, where they're taxing way more, and do not expect people to structure their finances in a way to avoid paying taxes. I mean, tax evasion has always been a criminal issue, but tax avoidance, has been around from day one. If I don't want to pay a sales tax in the United States, I just don't go buy a good. It's as simple as that. But if I buy the good, I'm expected to pay the sales tax. So it is kind of, but going back, to the bigger picture has always been, we do not promote what it is that we do best. And as a result, we have allowed everyone else to set the agenda when our industry and what our forefathers have set for us, where we were industrial leaders, where we were pushing our agenda, we were setting the trend. Now we start following, and look at what has happened to our banking industry. 10 years and plus ago, we had almost close to 600 banks. Today we barely have around 220. Little by little, our financial industry is being eroded. Opportunities for jobs are being lost for Caymanians. We're not producing enough jobs to meet the demands of kids coming to school every year. And yet the little that we have, we're basically losing it again and again and again. And this in itself is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, Chris. Sorry, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
And then we literally have a government that's just kowtowing to the UK, as if the UK really and truly has Cayman best interest at heart. And the one thing I've always said to people that they need to remember, when we had our worst natural disaster, the UK did not help us.
Nope, they didn't answer the bell. They certainly didn't answer the bell the way they should have.
They did not help us. Why do people still think that they help us when we're up?
Question, Chris. And you may or may not be able to comment on this because you work with a financial institution who has shared a part of its wealth management. But is there any need for concern when we see financial institutions shedding part of their wealth management? Of course, they're shedding it, but there's always some other institution out there prepared to grab it up. So does it have to do with the particular management of and the direction that a company is going, as opposed to any other thing that we should be concerned about?
Absolutely, we should be concerned. Yes, I work in the financial industry, and I'm not going to call it about it specific, but this goes back to the point that we have always that I've always pushed. People need to understand that corporations are in business to make money for their shareholders. If being a good corporate citizen somewhere along the line makes them more amicable in terms of or more appealing to customers, that's fine. They will do that. But ultimately, it's always about their shareholders, and businesses will do what's best for their shareholders. What we have in Cayman right now, and not even just in Cayman, but other places, we have created such a compliance culture that, it is almost as if we have created an industry within an industry that has now made the cost of doing business so expensive. We have seen it with government. Government right now is going after companies for not paying pension, but government themselves is not even paying pension. We started back in the days, government giving building people a hard time, contractors a hard time for not meeting building code. Yet you had the planning department inside a building that wasn't even approved by planning, which is going back to the tower building. This has always been the history of Cayman. And no one wants to put their foot down and say, guys, you know what? Enough is enough. This is not how you build a country, and this is not how you move its people forward.
Okay, Chris, I want to thank you for that call, and I'm not sure if I'm going to see you this evening or when, but I think we'll probably, and if you're not going away, and I'm not going, we're probably going to spend some of the holidays licking the bones. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Art Connor, and want to remind you that For the Record is brought to you by the Auto Spa. You can get a free vacuum with an express wash on Tuesdays at the Auto Spa. We're going to take a quick break now. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Art Connor. I want to remind you that our phone lines are open. We always take your calls irrespective of what time they come in, unless we are having a topic and we want to get the meat of that issue, that topic, to you first to give you an opportunity to comment. But other than that, our phone lines are always open. You can call us, toll-free number, which is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. And of course, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, then you can email us at For the Record, one word, For the Record at candw.ky. We have about 4 minutes before we're going to go to a time check and then to the news. And then when we come back after the news, we will have the Honorable Minister of Finance, Honorable Marco Archer, who will be with us this morning. We'll be talking about the salary increases for civil servants. We will be talking about government's financial performance, how we're handling our debt, where we're at with that. So all of those things we'll be talking about after the news. So you stay tuned. You can have your fingers ready to go on the dial if you have any questions to ask the Honorable Marco Archer in relation to financial issues. Taking another look at Cayman News Service and a story in there. Job ads still excluding locals. Now, on this talk show, I've spoken about crime. I've spoken passionately about crime and the need to control crime and the need to prosecute criminals. And my viewpoint is no different when it comes to white-collar crimes as well. Or I don't know if you call this one white-collar crimes or white paper crimes, since it's a crime and part of it is perpetrated on paper. But these job ads still exclude locals. And let me just read partial. A small portion of the story on Cayman News Service. Although the government was upbeat this week about the projected fall in unemployment over the next 2 years, the recent announcement over bank closures and other major layoffs of local workers are compounded by ongoing problems for job seekers. Cayman News Service is continuing to highlight the day-to-day problems faced by local qualified job seekers, but with almost 20,200 valid work permits held by overseas employees, jobs ads are still being posted in the press that are clearly tailored to existing permit holders and designed to deter local applicants. One such ad causing a significant stir in local media this week was that posted on the National Work NWDA job portal. I have to leave that as it is for now because we're going to go to a time check, and after the time check, we're going to go to the news. After the news, we will have Minister Marco Archer with us. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Art Connor. My guest in the studio with me, we have the Minister of Finance, Honorable Marco Archer, who is also the member of the Legislative Assembly for the district of Georgetown. And I say to you that after the news, we would have him on, and he's right here with us. Again, what the minister will want to basically lay a platform in terms of what he wants to talk about, what he wants to discuss. And I would ask the callers to just give him an opportunity to do that, lay the groundwork. And then if you have calls in relation to what he's talking about, any questions or observations, then please feel free to do that as well. It's no longer news, but I'm sure that people are still savoring the fact that it is happening, is that civil servants will be getting a 4% cost of living allowance, called a COLA, a pay rise in the next budget year. That has been announced by government, and even to Fox News. Not Fox News. The Caymanian Compass. Even the Caymanian Compass applauded the government, for that, and talked about the fact that 3.2 had been given, taken back, given again, and had to be taken back again. So, and even they have applauded the government, for that, despite their calls still about the size of the civil service and the need to decrease the size of the civil service. But Minister Archer, I'll hand it all over to you, and let you talk to our listening audience about what the government has announced, what the future financial outlook for the Cayman Islands, what that looks like. You can talk about the financial forecast, the performance, the public debt turnaround as well. We've seen some positive stories in the papers in relation to our financial position. So, Minister Archer, good morning, and welcome to For the Record again.
Good morning, Mr. Connor, and thank you very much for having me, and also good morning to the listening public, and it's a pleasure to be here this morning. With respect to what you just mentioned concerning the Cayman Islands government civil service being awarded a 4% cost of living adjustment, I just wanted to say that we are pleased that we could achieve this, and I know it is something that the civil service has been looking forward to for quite some time. I think as far back as 2008, 2009, when perhaps they got their last increase, and then of course we all know what happened in 2010 when it was given, taken back, given again, taken back again. So it is something that they have been anticipating for quite some time, but as I have said before, we wanted to ensure that the country was in a position to afford that before we acquiesce to their expectations. And as I said recently, it is not something for which the elected government will try to take credit. It was something that was owed to the civil service, and therefore we're not going to try to take credit for it. What we will say that we have done is that we have been able to manage the economy, manage the country's affairs in such a manner that it enabled us to give the 4%. So there's a difference between taking credit for something that was already owed and managing the affairs in such a manner that you are able to give back what is owed. Just want to set that record straight. Also, it is not retroactive. As I've said before, to many civil servants, that is not something that the country can afford. I think that would be somewhere in the region of $25 to $30 million to try to make that retroactive. We don't have that kind of money. Mm-hmm. We have done the best that we could afford to do. To the merchant class, I want to say that this, again, should not have any impact on inflation. It is something that we have done through savings. Over the last couple of years, we have reduced the annual expenditure by approximately $36 million. In June 2013, at the end of the fiscal year, the 12-13 fiscal year, annual operating expenditure for the Cayman Islands government was $566.5 million. We have reduced our expenditure to $529.7 million. So we're talking about approximately $36 million in reduced expenditure. In addition to that, we have also relied on economic growth to grow revenues and to create the reserves and the surpluses that we are building. We have not introduced any new revenue measures. We will not introduce any new revenue measures to facilitate this salary increase that we are giving the civil service. Therefore, we will not expect to see any inflationary pressure in the local economy because of the salary increase. And I just want to go on and explain why I'm saying that.
And there's no need then for merchants to think about raising the prices on anything now that our poor civil servants are starting to getting a little increase.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's no reason for it, and I'll explain why. There are domestic and external factors that relate to inflation. We have no control over the external factors, but from what I'm seeing, with the price of oil declining, we can expect that will have a downward pressure on prices that are on the external price pressures, which of course will then have a downward pressure on our own imports for most things. Also, with respect to CUC, we do know that the cost of diesel fuel is one of the great contributors to the cost of our high electricity. We do expect that over time we will see declining electricity rates. In addition to what the government has done, which will take effect January 1st, which was to reduce the duty on diesel by 25 cents, taking it down from 75 to 50 cents per gallon. So those are the external factors. Now, with respect to the domestic factors, you can have cost push or demand pull inflation. Our economy is performing well, but it is not yet at full capacity. There is still a lot of spare capacity, as in the case of the unemployment issues. So therefore, you would not expect to see demand pull inflation, where we have everyone basically well employed and added income is just spent and chasing after more money, chasing after fewer goods.
Just more disposable income. Yes.
Precisely. So we wouldn't expect to see any demand pull inflation created because of the fact that the economy isn't yet at full capacity. And because we have not introduced any new revenue measures, we do not expect the merchants to say that there is cost push inflation. Mm-hmm. So there is good reason all around for this not to have an inflationary impact on the domestic economy. It is good in the sense that the civil servants, and I think from what I've been reading and understanding, that 3 of every 4 employees in the civil service are Caymanians. Caymanians, for the mere fact that this is where they live, this is where they make their investments, tend to have a higher propensity to consume. That simply means that for every dollar they earn, they will spend more than the average person, the average resident. Mm-hmm. So therefore, this will have a greater economic stimulus by giving them the 4% to drive consumption. This is an economy that is highly dependent upon consumption. So by giving them a salary increase, we do expect that much of that will be spent, and therefore we will see greater economic activity within the economy. Perhaps even if merchants are interested enough, by keeping their prices low, or not increasing prices, they could see an increase in business, because the disposable income, the purchasing power of the civil servants would then go that much further in the various shops. But I do admit and I do accept that there are external factors beyond which the government has no control that can sometimes contribute to prices. But like I've said before, with the price of oil declining, we do expect that some of these things would also have a dampening effect on inflationary pressures.
Mm-hmm. And we're seeing that happening in the other industrialized countries. And, in most instances, we look at the United States and see what's happening there. And we see with the price of oil, price of gasoline going down, more travel, more spending, for people in terms of their disposable income and the choices that they have, as well. Now, as far as this increase or this cost of living increase, that is only for serving civil servants. Does that include pensioners as well?
No, it is just for currently employed civil servants, not pensioners.
So the pension office would do their adjustments like they did, I think this year in terms of cost of living increase. They do their own as well.
That's to the best of my understanding. That's how it works.
Now I know, Minister, also, and this is sort of like going off track a little bit, but before we forget it, we had Chris Saunders on the line earlier, and you wanted to correct something that he said in relation to pensions and government.
Yeah, thank you. I always enjoy listening to Mr. Saunders because
yes,
he is well informed. But in this case, I just want to correct the statement with respect to the government not paying their pensions. There is with respect to the defined benefit pension plan, there is an unfunded liability that has developed over the years because I think our pension plans were only established some years ago and not from the time we started paying pensions to civil servants. The government, or I should say the Progressives administration, from 2005 to 2009, I think they contributed some 15 million per annum per year, 15 million. So over the 4 years, it would have been $60 million to the unfunded portion of the liability. This administration, the 2013 to 2017 Progressives-led administration, we're contributing $11.6 million every year towards the unfunded pension liability, reducing that as we go along. In addition to that, there is the monthly pension payment to the pension plan for both defined benefit and defined contribution. So the government is making monthly regular payments into the pension plan. So it is not correct to say that the government isn't making any payments. We are funding the unfunded portion, trying to reduce that, and we are funding the current portion, trying to ensure that that remains.
Right. The liability is still there, and the fact that there was always an arrears there is still there, but government now continues to contribute and to pay in.
Precisely.
Saying,
yes. Also, going back to the salary increases, the natural expectation is, of course, that the statutory authorities and government-owned companies will also question, well, do we get something? And just to say to the listening public, I will be speaking to the chairpersons of those statutory authorities this week. I am just waiting on consultation, input from my colleagues as to the precise approach that we will take, but we will be addressing that this week.
And of course, you can't tilt your hat or your hand in relation to what you will say there. There has always been the concern that statutory authorities and government companies, because they have the ability to set their salaries and whatever pay packages that are arranged, and there has always been the view that they have been certainly more generous than what the regular civil servant makes as well.
Precisely. And our financial affairs at the end of the year depend on the contributions of those statutory authorities and government-owned companies, and we need to ensure that there is at least $9 million overall contribution from these statutory authorities and government-owned companies. That has to be there for us to achieve our fiscal targets that we've set. So I'll be discussing those matters with the various chairpersons of those SAGCs.
Okay. When we come back, Minister Archer, we want to talk about the strategic policy statement as well. We know that was delivered by the Premier, but you would have had input in that as well. And the relationship between the Cayman Islands and the UK government in relation to the strategic policy statement and their feelings and their position in terms of the way that the country is now heading financially as well. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Art Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning is the Honorable Marco Archer, Minister of Finance, and also your MLA for the District of Georgetown. Please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Art Connor, and my guest in the studio with me is no other than Honorable Marco Archer, Minister of Finance. We've been talking about the salary increase for civil servants. We want to talk about the government's financial performance as well. We're going to talk about the strategic policy statement and the relationship with the UK in relation to that. I want to remind you that you can call us on our toll-free number, which is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. I also want to remind you that For the Record is brought to you by the Auto Spa on Godfrey Nixon Way, and you can get a free vacuum with an express wash on Tuesdays at the Auto Spa. Minister Archer, the Section 23 of the Public Management and Finance Law requires the strategic policy statement for his fiscal year to contain, certain elements, economic forecast for the current financial year and for the next 2 financial years, a total financial target for core government for the next financial year and for each of the following 2 financial years related to revenues, expenses, surpluses, borrowings, net worth, and cash reserves. And that there are other requirements, but that one encapsulates most of it. Now, being in government, and sometimes we used to hear announcements in the past that the strategic policy statement is going to be given, certain dates and then, put off at certain dates. And a lot of times that had to do with getting the concurrence of the UK in terms of the substance of that strategic policy statement. And we didn't see that in this case this time. Is that an indication that the United Kingdom government and in relation to our the FFR, that they're basically happy with the direction that the Cayman Islands is heading now financially?
Absolutely. We have developed a fairly good relationship with the FCO in that our numbers are more credible, and we spend more time trying to ensure that we do go about achieving the targets that we have set. And the FCO has commented that actually, I think I'll just quote from the letter. It says, "I know that your government has committed to making sound management of Cayman Islands public finances as a top priority, and congratulate you for the positive progress that you've made." And I understand that the FCO's economic advisor to the overseas territory has reviewed the SPS with your officials and commend the Ministry of Finance for the cooperative and positive approach it has taken in these discussions. I know that the CIG, Cayman Islands government that is, are on track to deliver a fiscal trajectory which brings into compliance with the FCO's borrowing guidelines by 2015-16 as outlined in the FFR. It is important that the significant progress made by CIG is maintained and that you continue to keep a watchful eye on public expenditure. My officials look forward to continuing to work closely with you and your team as you prepare your 2015-16 budget. So, we have done everything that is necessary to achieve these targets. And I want the country to understand this is something that perhaps no one really felt was, or I should say, it's something that some people did not appreciate the FCO doing. But these are safety ratios that are for our own best interest. And therefore, from my perspective, or any prudent individual, it is good that you have these safety ratios. Sometimes you can forget that you need to be careful as to how you go about things. And I think that is what happened to the Cayman Islands. We forgot. We thought we would always have the money that we used to have. We thought that the world economy would continue to be the way that it always was. And therefore, with the imposition of the framework for fiscal responsibility, these safety ratios were imposed upon us. And every prudent financial manager, financial institution imposes safety ratios. When you go to the bank and ask for a loan, they ask you for your income, they ask you for your expenses, and then they say to you, your debt service ratio is X. Yes, we approve your loan. No, sorry, you are too risky. A country is no different. That's what I'm trying to get everyone to understand. I am doing nothing different in managing the affairs of the country than a prudent person should do in managing their own financial affairs. It is financial principles. The figures make no difference. It is the principles that you employ in managing the affairs. So that's all that's happening here.
Yeah, and you heard it here on For the Record. The minister's been honest with you. He's not taking any personal credit for what has taken place. He's just basically following the rules, and you know, as a financial manager, knows exactly what needs to take place. Folks, want to remind you that the phone lines are open. You can call us on our toll-free number, 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990 if you have any questions or observations. Now, Minister Archer, some people would say, yes, the financial position of the government is fine, but it isn't necessarily translating into the local economy as fast as they would like to see it. You know, as far as, you know, more jobs are concerned, more development is concerned. And while that is not maybe not be a part of your portfolio in terms of the development part of it, the construction, new roads, new projects, and stuff like that. What do we say to people who say that the trickle-down effect hasn't gotten there yet?
Thank you. Mr. Connor, just to say that before I go on to answer the specific question, these safety ratios are things that I would obviously would like to have seen if they were not imposed. But the fact that the FCO imposed them has certainly made my job that much easier in having to try to convince my colleagues that this is something that we should do. And thankfully, my colleagues are all of the same opinion. This is something that's good for the country. With respect to the situation and jobs not increasing as quickly as they could, that is one situation in which you could say that the FFR has had adverse impact. And I'll explain why. The FFR, because of events that transpired in recent years, has imposed strict guidelines as to what has to be done before you can commence the construction of your capital projects, infrastructure projects. You have to go through your business case. You have to do your outline strategic case. You have to then present a credible plan to the FCO that yes, this can be done. It isn't going to break the country. It can pay for itself. We are able to fund it without breaching our safety ratios. Each of those outline business case, strategic business case, they all require professional reports. The professional reports require expenditure. The preparation of the professional reports all take time. So therefore, it adds a significant length of time to the implementation of the infrastructure projects. In this case, sometimes years. But that was thought necessary because of some of the things that transpired in the past with other attempts to implement capital projects. Now, we are on our way to implementing some of these projects, and they will be commenced within the next fiscal year, or within the next calendar year, 2015. The port should start by about third, fourth quarter 2015. Of course, the port being the most sensitive one, the cruise berthing facility, that requires an environmental impact assessment. And from what I can understand, that is well on its way. And then after that is completed, you then have to go through the tender process, which again takes several months. So the port being the most sensitive one, of course, will take the longest. Okay. The cruise berthing port, that is. The airport that is also progressing well.
Yep, well underway. Last night I came in on a flight from Kingston around about midnight, and work was going on, and the hammering and everything was going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we expect that those two projects will come in sometime next year. The solid waste management facility is also progressing. It is unfortunate, I'll say this, that you need to do all of those studies and everything
Yes.
to remediate the
Uh-huh.
landfill. You should, but at the same time, that's to ensure that you don't go spending money and significant amounts of money before you know what you're doing. You would only at the end of the day waste the money. So that is progressing as well. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they just awarded the contract to
Yes.
AMEC.
The minister was on here, and
Precisely.
yes. Yep,
So that
great.
issue has been well ventilated.
Okay. If I can interrupt you there, Minister, we have one caller on the line, so
Sure.
and they've been on there for a while, so we're going to grab that caller now. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Yes, good morning, Minister Mark Archer, and good morning, Mr. Art Connor.
Good morning. How are you, sir?
Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Okay, thank you. I have two questions, and then I'll hang up and listen. Right now, how much is social services paying those individuals who are in financial need monthly? And then I know we're not paying direct taxes from our salaries, but I was wondering, in the future, is it possible that government is able to contribute to a person's pension who may be making $2,000 a month or less? Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller, for that, Minister.
I will try to answer them. I am not absolutely certain as to how much each individual is receiving
Right.
from the social. I keep referring to the social services. I think it's the Department of Children and Family Services.
Mhm.
Correct. I'm not certain as to how much each individual would receive. I think it would depend on their needs as determined by the needs assessment unit. So it would vary from individual to individual, obviously based on their income and perhaps the number of children that they may have or their medical condition, whatever the case be, their ability to work. With respect to government contributing towards people's pensions, I know that currently, of course, pensioners from the Cayman Islands government pensioners would obviously receive their pension. Now, private sector employees who retire would have or should be getting their own pensions. Now, the government doesn't directly contribute to their personal income, but because of the financial situation for many people, some of them do approach the needs assessment unit and do receive assistance from the Department of Children and Family Services, as well as they do fall on difficult times and may need medical assistance and therefore may receive assistance through the Cayman Islands National Insurance Company, Synico.
Right.
So while the government doesn't make a direct financial payment into their accounts or into their hands, they do receive assistance that would otherwise have to come from their own pockets, which they wouldn't have.
Thanks very much for those answers, Minister Archer. I'm sure that the public, the press, the Chamber of Commerce as well, we're all happy in hearing no more borrowings and seeing the success that's being achieved in terms of our payments, interest payments and everything, the reduction in cost, the government for borrowings. Do you wish to comment in that area?
Actually, before I go to that, I just want to continue the point with respect to the unemployment.
Okay, yes.
Of course, the government, our capital projects, we would hope that, not hope, the intention of those capital projects is not just to improve the infrastructure, but to also create employment opportunities for Caymanians. Now, as I've said, because of the length of time that is required to implement these projects, it has had a somewhat less than desirable effect on speeding up the employment opportunities. So because of that, we are doing everything necessary to ensure that we stimulate private consumption and investment within the economy so that the private sector can grow at a faster pace and therefore create those job opportunities for the Caymanians. You would see that we have done things for the small businesses. Small and medium-sized businesses tend to create more job opportunities at a faster rate than the bigger companies. Hence, our focus on that sector of the economy. So, because of the and I just want to keep stressing this point so that people don't think that the government is just turning a blind eye to what is happening. It is for this reason why construction projects are seen as leading economic indicators, because they do lead to job creation, right, and reducing the unemployment rate. Because of that, we expect that there should be significant reduction not in the unemployment rate, not just because of the construction jobs that are created, but because of the other side jobs that come with that. So that's...
If you build a building, you're going to need people to service that building, to clean it and everything
furniture,
else.
Equipment, those types of things. Turning now to the debt, it is wonderful that we have been able to avoid borrowing. I'll start with our overdraft facility. The government has relied on the overdraft facility for quite some years now. In 2013-14, when we took office, we approached the UK and they approved an overdraft facility of a maximum $30 million up to the end of October. And then for the entire fiscal year, no more than $46 million. I would like to say to the public that up to the end of October last year, 2013, we were able to avoid using the overdraft facility. But as we approach December, our cash balances tend to decline. As of December 20th, we had only used $22.6 million of that 30 of the 46 of the $46 million. And by January 14th, we were in the positive balance again. For the fiscal year 2014-15, we were confident enough that we would not need an overdraft facility. We did not request one, and today is the first day of December, and we have not yet gone into overdraft. And the projections, the forecast that I'm receiving from the Ministry of Finance is that by the 31st of December, we would not have needed an overdraft facility. And of course, as we know, in January, February, March, we start to receive the annual payments from the financial industry and the tourism industry. So by the grace of God,
revenues will pick up then,
precisely. By the grace of God, our financial performance has been such that we have not needed an overdraft facility, and quite frankly, we don't have one. So, and we will not need one. That has saved us a significant amount of interest, because just to activate the overdraft facility, just to activate it, is $100,000.
Wow.
Just to activate it.
Wow.
Not to mention the amount of interest you save by not having to rely on one.
Yeah, that is good news for people of the Cayman Islands. May not be good news for the bankers, but certainly good news for us.
Yes, that's right. We can't go broke to ensure someone else survives. They have to tighten their belt too.
Yep.
Turning now to the bigger debt picture. We would remember that several years ago our debt was in the, I think it's total entire public sector was approximately $728 million, if I'm not correct. And sometimes the numbers escape me. I don't recall all of them. But just to say that we are, as at the 30th of June, we will be as at the 30th of June next year, the 2015 fiscal year. The entire public sector debt balance is forecast to be $631.4 million. And of that $631.4 million, the central government will account for $523.5 million, and the statutory authorities and government-owned companies will account for $107.9 million. So that's as at next June, the 30th of June, 2015, the end of this current fiscal year. And then over the 3-year period of the strategic policy statement, which would be at the end of June 2018, we expect that the overall balance will decline to $509.7 million. That's a significant reduction in the years. Now, we would also know that as part of one of the safety ratios, we have a debt service ratio of our central government's revenue cannot exceed more than 10% of the entire public sector debt servicing costs, right? We are going to pay off 10 million US of the CIDB's outstanding debt. We're going to pay that off early in 2015. So that will reduce their debt by about $10 million, and it will also enable the government to then reduce its debt service ratio to 9.8% by the end of this fiscal year, 30th June 2015. So that come July 1, 2016, we are in compliance with the requirement to be below the 10% debt service ratio. So those are some of the things that we are doing. And of course, during this time, we will be making contributions to a sinking fund, which will then assist us in paying off future years of debt. We are looking to enter into discussions with the various lenders to see, what else we can do. So all of those things are being done to ensure that we not just reduce our debt service ratio, but to also reduce our overall debt balance and the interest thereon. So we are, I can't reveal everything at this stage.
Sure,
I much prefer to say
that,
things
yes.
after they're done. That way there's no confusion as to what was promised and what is achieved.
What is achieved, yeah. That is so true.
But thankfully, by the grace of God, we have been able to achieve all that we are saying, and primarily because we are being conservative and realistic as to what we can do and the time by which it can be done.
Mm-hmm. And if government creates the environment for businesses to thrive, for them to do, and we hear lots of them complain about certain things, planning approvals and stuff like that not happening, as quickly as they would like to see them happen so that they can get projects online. But the more that government creates a better environment for businesses to operate, the less reliance there is then on government to provide that impetus, that push, for the economy. Yes, you will still need to do certain public projects that are necessary, but you're not relied upon to be the engine of growth.
And that's correct. In any economy, you have your three basic components. You have your government, you have your private investment, and then you have your consumption, private consumption. In small island economies, governments, or properly functioning governments, tend to account for 15 to 20%. Some in other countries are much larger because of the economy not being as diverse, not being as strong. It all depends on the circumstances within the country. Nothing is right or wrong. It depends on the circumstances. We are hovering somewhere around 20%, right? But the important thing is what enables private sector to thrive is confidence in the business environment, confidence in the government's approach to business, confidence in the sense that they know that they will not be saddled with unexpected increased costs by way of increased taxation. Those are the things that we are doing. Because of the fact that we are able to maintain and to reduce our debt balances, improve our macroeconomic picture, our credit rating remains strong. So when a big company in the Cayman Islands is looked upon, it is looked upon in the context of the fact that it is operating in the Cayman Islands, and therefore it is given an added level of respect because of the fact that it is a Cayman Islands company operating in the Cayman Islands. The fiscal outlook, the macroeconomic outlook for the Cayman Islands is positive. The prospects for that company are also positive. And those things then give businesses confidence to go ahead, make investments, expand, hire new employees, and broaden their footprint. So it's the macro picture translates to the micro picture for the businesses, and that translates to employment opportunities for individuals. But I keep saying this because it's something that I've done all my life. the recession that has just passed and we are pulling out of, it created a structural shift in the way people do business, in the way the economy is performed. Even China has decided that it will try to shift its economy from a development and export-led economic growth to more private consumption and growth of their middle class to sustain the economic growth. You can't keep building forever, right? China has realized that. Financial institutions are also looking at the global picture and saying, what do we have to do to strengthen our positions, strengthen our base? Unfortunately, that has resulted in some job losses. It doesn't mean that the banks are any weaker. It doesn't mean that the financial institutions are any weaker. It just means that they are refocusing how they go about employing their capital. The government will do everything possible to ensure that those Caymanians are given job opportunities, hopefully in a field in which they're qualified. But I also want to stress that everyone must take stock of their personal circumstances and realize that while the strength of the financial industry, or while the financial industry hasn't weakened in any way, the types of jobs that are available in the financial industry may not always be as they are today. Each individual has a responsibility to go get themselves qualified. And if they're not, exactly. When there's a shift in circumstances, you need to adapt. And it's something that I've done all my life. I'll say this quickly. I can see we're going to a break.
Okay. There's
an excellent book. You can read it in about 2 hours. It's called Who Moved My Cheese? Okay. What it refers to is changing it's set around some little rats. But what it refers to is changing circumstances. And you have to recognize that your circumstances have changed and you adapt quickly. Those who are slow to adapt tend not to progress as quickly as the others who have adapted. So go on, get the new qualifications, and look for something else, or move up in the jobs that you're able to apply for.
Excellent. We're going to go to news headlines at this point in time. Folks, please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Art Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning is the Honorable Marco Archer, Minister of Finance, and your MLA who represents the District of Georgetown. You've heard us discuss several issues on For the Record this morning. We've talked about public debt. We've talked about the performance, more so the financial forecast and performance. We haven't spoken about the economic one yet, and the Minister will talk about that as well. I want to remind you that our phone lines are open. You can call us on our toll-free number, which is 1-800-345-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. And even if you're a civil servant, and you want to call in and express your opinions about the salary increase that will take place in July of next year. And I know, you civil servants are creative, so you are able to disguise your voice if you don't want anybody to know that it is you. So if you want to call in and not someone not know who you are, you can do that job. But we do have one caller on the line now, so we will take that caller now. Two callers actually. First caller. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
O.C.?
Yes, good morning. How are you?
Is that me?
Yes, it is you, and that's me.
Yes. Good morning. I am still painful, but I'm still very thankful because I'm very, very blessed.
Good.
I count my blessings. I don't count them one by one, I just count them all one time.
Okay.
And
Very
good morning to the minister there, too.
Good morning, Mom. Good morning.
And you know what, too? Merry Christmas, Donna.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much. What you got to tell us this morning?
I need some explanations on a few things.
Okay.
So the minister, how long has it been since they haven't been since all that spending when we didn't really have to spend? I'm asking this not only for my benefit, but for others that like for me to call in and ask about things for them. I mean, I'm talking about people that's older or a little older than myself. Did you understand that one?
I'm happy to answer the question. I just didn't understand. You said something about spending when it shouldn't have spent. I don't quite follow what you mean.
How long is it?
No.
Go ahead.
No. When it did, the spending that went on when we didn't have it to spend.
Okay. So how long has it been?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And the other question?
And the other one is, can you please explain which affordable homes that the DART had got their concessions for?
Okay, I'll answer both questions as best I can. Given the way you worded the question, I'm uncertain as to what spending you're referring to when we didn't have it to spend.
Probably
Because
talking about the economic downturn in the like 2008, probably.
I don't know, but we have the government, the Cayman Islands government, and I'll put it this way so you'll understand exactly what I'm saying. For many years, the Cayman Islands government have been borrowing to balance their budget. Anytime you borrow to balance your budget, you're spending what you do not have to spend. You don't have the money to spend, but you're borrowing to spend it. So as long as that has been going on, then the Cayman Islands government have been spending money that they did not have the money to spend. I'll take a guess as to what I think you mean, or what you might be referring to. Perhaps you are referring to the time when the government embarked on a capital investment program. And I think that's what you're referring to, Ma'am. If you're still listening, perhaps you could correct me.
Yes, sir. Okay,
perfect. Thank you, Ma'am. Thank you. That occurred in 2005 to 2009 administration. And of course, they were going on the assumption that the Cayman Islands economy and the global economy would continue to grow at the rate, and therefore revenues would continue to come in at the rate at which they were coming. And unfortunately, at that stage, no one saw the global recession coming. And I can say that with all confidence because I recall reading the minutes of the Federal Reserve Bank in the United States, and several months before the recession hit, they were still debating and wondering whether or not it would happen and what approach they would take. So us in the Cayman Islands can be forgiven for not seeing it coming at the rate at which it did arrive and when it did arrive. But the ambition was to improve the infrastructure, create jobs, and improve job opportunities for Caymanians and the quality of life. The roads certainly were to move people to and fro, home and work much faster. The schools were to create educational opportunities in the outer districts, because I always grew up in Georgetown, but I remember going to high school. The children from Eastern and North Side would tell us that they had to get up in the dark, sometimes catch the bus in the dark, ride to school for an hour, get to school, participate in class, and then when we left school at 3 o'clock, we could get home by 3:30. It was about 4:30, 5 o'clock before those children got back home from school. Added to that, their parents who worked in Georgetown did not leave work until 5 o'clock or 5:30. They then did not get home until 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the evening. So therefore, overall, by building the schools and giving the children in the Eastern District a shorter distance to travel, it created a better quality of educational opportunity. It created more time at home with the children, with the parents, and enabled them for a better family quality of life. So I think the intentions were the best. What happened was the lack of understanding as to what would be coming around the corner with respect to the global recession and the reduction in revenues.
Okay, thank you very much, caller, for that. I ask you to leave us here. Let's take the the affordable homes question. Yes, sorry, caller.
Yes, caller, I was asked a parliamentary question a few days ago in the parliament, and with respect to the concessions that the DART Realty Cayman Limited received under the Four Cayman Investment Alliance Agreement, and then subsequent the NRA agreement, National Roads Authority agreement. to the best of my memory, I don't have that paper in front of me, but I think it was something like 2.7 million Cayman Islands dollars. And I'm saying this subject to correction. I do not have the figures in front of me.
Or possibly 5?
No. It was she said the concessions.
Oh, the concessions.
The concessions.
Yeah,
It was 2.7 million CI dollars in affordable housing fees that were waived. And then there were other infrastructure fees that were also waived. Those figures escaped me. But the DART Corporation did give US $5 million
yes.
to the government. I'm not sure if that was consideration for land in the exchange agreement or if it was a grant. The jury's still out on that one. But of that 5 million US, approximately for CI, $2.2 million went towards Save the Mortgage program in the government that the Premier or the Minister of Finance, my apologies, the Minister of Finance were given the responsibility to deal with. So we waived 2.7 million in affordable housing and received 2.2 million in Save the Mortgage program.
Excellent. Let's take the next caller. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. Connor.
Good morning.
Mr. Archer.
Good morning, Mr. Borden. How are you, sir?
Not too bad.
Good morning,
This
sir.
is, you would know my voice.
Can't hide.
I must tell you that I am not a regular caller to talk shows, but I'm a good listener. And I've been listening to Minister Archer and yourself for the last 35 to 40 minutes. And I just called in to say how fortunate we are in the Cayman Islands, all who live here, Caymanians and non-Caymanians alike, because anything that goes on in Cabinet affects us all. And we are very fortunate to have a qualified and experienced Christian professional managing our country's affairs. I think he deserves every inch of congratulations, and all the support that we can give him, because I believe that he is doing an outstanding job. And apart from that, he has an extra measure of that rare thing called, we Caymanians call common sense. He's sensible and patient and dedicated.
And the humility to go with it as well, yeah.
And he has all, that's correct, don't leave that out. And he has all the markings of a professional who can make a contribution to this country for many years to come. And I only call to congratulate him most sincerely and to let him know that as long as I am absent from Dixie, I will be supporting him and voting for him, because he deserves good credit for what he has accomplished in such a short time, and we can expect bigger and better things from Minister Archer, who is handling our financial affairs. And I see a great light at the end of the tunnel with the qualified people that we have running our country at this time. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I'll continue to listen. Thank
you very much, Mr. Borden, for listening in as well, Minister Archer.
I just want to say thanks to Mr. Borden. I think I know which Mr. Borden it is, but given that he didn't identify himself, I will err on the side of caution and say thank you, Mr. Borden. I very much appreciate your kind words and your vote of confidence in me, and your having expressed your intention to continue to support me. And I just want the listening public to understand that he is correct. I am a Christian man. I do believe that Christ Jesus is my Savior. I believe that everything that I do, I try to glorify God with it. And for a time, I was wondering whether or not I should enter the political arena. And I wondered whether it was my ego or something that the Lord was putting on my heart. And one day, for some reason, my eye caught the Bible and realized that not every, but most leaders in the Bible were Christian people. And then the Lord led me one day to read Romans chapter 13. And it spoke there of all authority is created by God. for the service of God. And of course, the government is the authority in the country. And then the chapter before that, Romans chapter 12, it speaks of the various gifts that we are given for various purposes. And one of them is the gift of leadership for diligent governance. And then I realized Christian people can be politicians. And there is such a thing as an honest politician. And having the Christian values and knowing that ultimately we are accountable to God is what guides me in the way I conduct my affairs as a representative. And I really don't like the word politician. I really don't like the word politician, because I believe that politics is what happens when people don't know what to do.
Yep.
Right? So I believe that, all that I have been able to do is because of my relationship with God and my open dependence upon God for continued guidance, and credit to God for what He's done thus far.
Great, excellent. We have 3 callers online. Let's go to those callers. Next caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. O.T.
Good morning, how are you?
Good, I'm fine. Good morning, Mr. Archer.
Good morning, sir.
Stanley Hill here. I also want to congratulate you on a high note. I can't read off all of those accolades that Mr. Barton just said, but I will echo the same words that he just got off the radio saying. I think you're doing a great job, and you keep up the faith. You couldn't have a better person to look forward to guide you than God and Jesus. So keep the faith. But Mr. Archer, there's a question I want to ask you this morning. The Contractors Association, and along with other contractors, made an amendment to the builder's bill. It was presented, apparently it was presented, I'm not too sure because I haven't heard it officially, but it was presented to caucus. It was refused, it was turned down. I would like to know why this was not put in place. The amendments were not accepted in caucus or in cabinet. I would like to know why it was not accepted, because it's the only area that we have. There's the only area now that will protect Caymanians in the building industry, or the only bill that we have coming forth to protect the builders in this country. And I would like to know why it was turned down, or why was it refused to move forward, and why wasn't the amendment being accepted so we could move forward with this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. First of all, thank you for the compliments that you paid me. With respect to the builder's bill, I do recall that it did come before caucus, and as to the exact reason why it hasn't yet progressed to the cabinet stage, I think it's Minister Tibbetts who is obviously the best placed to answer this question. I want to digress for a quick minute. While we all meet as a caucus, and then several of us meet in cabinet, it isn't the natural progression to believe that everyone has perfect knowledge of everything. We all have our areas of concentration, and while you may have an idea, because it isn't your direct area of responsibility, you don't commit everything to memory. Mm-hmm. Ask me anything you want to about my area of responsibility, and I can answer it better than anyone else within cabinet or caucus. Ask me about their area of responsibility, and they can answer better than I can.
Exactly. Yep.
So, Mr. Hill, with all due respect, I don't recall the exact reason why it hasn't yet progressed to the cabinet stage, but I do recall that Minister Tibbetts will be holding a meeting sometime in the near future with I think the Contractors Association concerning some of the provisions within the draft bill. And honestly, sir, that's the best answer that I can give you right now. The exact reasons I can't remember without going back to my caucus notes.
And here on For the Record, we'll try to get that information as well from the ministry and pass that on to the listener as well, and to the public in general who would have an interest.
Precisely.
Okay. Thank you very much again, caller, for those questions and your kind words, like Minister Archer said to him. We have 2 more callers. Next caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm fine. Right now, I want to say good morning to Brother Archer. This is my first brother.
Good morning, Brother Rupert.
Thank you. And I want to join Mr. Borden in what he said. I think, in fairness, the date that the Bible speaks of did and yet speak it, the Honorable Sir Wassell would have been proud. Keep up the good work. God bless you. And stick to the way you handle things. Have a good day.
Thank you, Roops, and you do the same.
Thank you, Brother Rupert. I just want to let the public know that I was baptized in the Boston Bay Presbyterian Church in West Bay, and Brother Rupert was one of the elders in the church who, of course, encouraged me to not. My wife encouraged me to attend church. It was Brother Rupert, which was my wife at the time, but it was Brother Rupert and some of the other elders who encouraged me to continue to attend church. Mm-hmm. And therefore, God's will led to my acceptance of Christ Jesus and baptism. So I have fond memories of the Boston Bay Presbyterian Church and Brother Rupert and several of the other elders there.
Great. One more caller. Caller, good morning and welcome to For the Record.
Good morning to you, Mr. O.C.
Good morning, Mr. Hurlston. How are you?
That's fine. Thank you, sir. Good morning to the Honourable Minister.
Good morning, Mr. Hurlton, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. I too would join with Mr. Norman and accolades that he gave you here. They're in competent hands. And I must say that I like what you said when you said you don't want to call or elected representatives. You notice whenever I call in, I never call them politicians. I say elected representatives. As you quite rightly said, it gives that aura of somebody sort of dishonest, or not even dishonest, but not playing with a full deck of cards. When we're talking about politicians, we try to find everything that's degrading or disrespectful or whatever. But the truth and reality is a bunch of remarkable people who decide to run for elections here. And considering you not only have to obey the British masters in Parliament here, but also the European Union has now come into play. A lot as we see with the many European Union conventions on human rights and stuff, which will have a profound effect, as I said before we even put it into law. It will change a lot of things here and not all for the good. Anyway, what I'd like to say with the financial situation, we have to step back a bit and realize why we're where we're at. Recession, the United States and all that has a big deal to play, but when you look at a lot of people became billionaires out of the recession, or so-called recession as I call it, because a lot more money was printed than ever been printed before. And the only thing you can do is money is to spend it. There's got to be somewhere. 40 years ago, a person earning $2 an hour could buy nearly 4 gallons of gasoline with 1 hour's pay. Now, a person earning $5 an hour cannot buy 1 gallon of gasoline with an hour's pay. And there are people also who are paying up to $8, $10 some a day in bus fare to get to and from work, and they're working for $5 an hour. They have to work for 2 hours just to pay their bus fare or to buy gas for their vehicle and so forth. They have to work hours. The point I'm trying to make is our money and the salary that a lot of the people are earning is worth much, much less than it was worth 40 years ago. But no one told the people over the years that you have to lower your standard of living. We have a high standard of living, but at a great cost. At a great cost to the little people we have no, and my call is always been this. We have to now think about direct income tax and do with it some of the onerous, unjust, and unconscionable mandatory placements we have put on our people. Mandatory savings, which we call a pension, it's a mandatory savings really, because it's not really a pension. It is not when you look at it. And also the mandatory health scheme, which many are paying into, can't afford to pay into. And when they need health care, it doesn't really cover them and pay to private institutions. But other than that, I see it is time, and I implore past elected representatives to think seriously about it. Some method of direct income tax that we will have a consistent flow of revenue into the treasury, because it is to me the greatest source of revenue available is the amount of salaries that people are earning here. Some are earning humongous salaries, as everybody knows. Some are earning very little, but it evens things out.
Okay, caller, I'm going to ask if you could leave us there. We have to run to a break now, and Minister Archer will give you an opportunity to respond to that caller as soon as we come back from that break. Folks, please stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. Folks, we're on the last leg of our 2-hour show this morning. Lots to talk about. Minister Archer has covered quite a bit himself. We've gotten some provocative questions from our listening audience, and really good questions. And where possible, Minister Archer has given answers, and where he isn't directly responsible for the particular subject, we have given an undertaking to seek answers from the ministry and then get that information out to our listening audience as well. Our last caller, Minister Archer, you wanted to respond to him.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. And in response to the question from Mr. Hurlston, or not so much a question, I think it was more of a comment he made. Yes. Yeah. He made two comments which I'll try to respond to. One is the rising cost of living. He is correct that, years ago, the cost of living would have been somewhat lower, given the fact that we, didn't depend so much on external imports, and therefore weren't subject to so much of the external price pressures. But it is something that people need to recognize. As time goes on, prices do increase. Population numbers grow. There's more competition for those goods and services. There's more competition for land. Therefore, the cost of purchasing the land, building the building, borrowing the money from the bank, paying the rent, to operate the store, all of those costs increase. And therefore, all of those costs are translated into higher prices. Now, the way to keep up with rising costs of living is to continue to control your expenditure, adjust your consumption pattern, increase your level of education to increase your income earning potential. There is no other way to do it. You can gamble with the stock market. You can gamble with investments. Some of those are successful, some of those are unsuccessful. The best way, the most proven way, control your expenditure, improve your education, increase your income earning potential. With respect to direct taxation, as Mr. Hurlston continues to be a proponent of, direct taxation has pros and cons to it. Indirect taxation that we currently employ in the Cayman Islands also has pros and cons to it. To me, it isn't so much an issue as to whether you have one or the other. They both relate to money coming in to the government in the form of revenue. The issue is, how is that revenue then spent? It is about government being prudent and wise about its expenditure, regardless of how that revenue is derived, be it direct taxation or indirect taxation. There are some countries around the world who are in great financial and economic difficulty. They have a direct taxation system. There are some countries around the world who are in great financial and economic positions. They also have direct taxation. The tax havens, I don't want to say tax havens, the financial jurisdictions such as Cayman and others, several of us would have the indirect method. And some of us are doing well, and there are some that aren't doing so well. So, that proves the point that it isn't a matter as to which method you employ. It is how efficient, how wise, how prudent is your government, your elected government, at managing and spending that money. That is what creates problems. You would always have your income redistribution. You would always have your income inequality within an economy. It is that income inequality that enables the upper income bracket to go ahead and invest and create jobs. The struggle for our government is to ensure that that income does not, the inequality gap does not grow too widely.
Which can create other problems.
Create other problems. So that is where the government has to manage its affairs and its expenditure, and has to detail and direct its expenditure in such a manner to avoid that. And putting the schools in an area where there were no schools before is one such method. Creating infrastructure projects to move people to and from jobs, create business opportunities. Those are some of the ways in which governments spend their money to ensure that they create business and job opportunities for its people, to ensure that that income gap does not broaden too rapidly. Because you would relate to this very well. Think of the U.S. Many towns, many cities evolved around schools. The school went there first. That required housing. When the houses were built for the teachers and the students, that, of course, for them to live there, that required businesses to operate, services to be provided. You can see the very same thing happening in Northside now. That whole Frank Sound area has now become a hotbed for development because the school is there.
And larger jurisdictions, when you're thinking about moving from one place to the other, and then you have children, the first thing you look at, what is the condition of the school? What is the quality of the schooling that is there? Because you have your concerns about that.
Now, I'll separate. I'm a straight shooter. I'll separate the concept of the school and the establishment and construction of the school from the cost overruns that people have complained about. I'll be honest about that.
Yep.
But the fact of the school and the spending and the capital investment, those are some of the things that a government does to ensure that they create opportunities for business. And it is when the small man recognizes there's a business opportunity, sets up that business, he then grows, or even the employee who is prudent about the way they manage their affairs, they then move up and close that income inequality gap. And that's the way you do it.
Yeah.
Whether it's direct taxation or indirect taxation, it is about how the government manages the expenditure of the revenue.
If we can shift back quickly before we close off in relation to the cost of living increase, we always see situations where the persons in the higher salary bracket are able to benefit more from it. And there are some people who advocate that when we look at these salary increases, maybe we should give less to those in the higher income bracket and more to those in the lower income brackets. Any thought was given to that, or maybe even in the future if the financial situation improves?
That's a very good question. I recall years gone by, whenever there was we're talking here about a cost of living adjustment, but I'm going to speak now of a salary review exercise. I remember years gone by in the government, with the salary review exercises, I was on the bottom. I was, new to the government, finished university, but hadn't yet reached any of the top management positions. I recall too, and in the salary review exercises, the percentage increase at the top was always bigger than the percentage at the bottom. And I always thought that was quite unfair, Now, what we have here that we're talking about is a cost of living adjustment, where you are trying to ensure that people keep up with a rising cost of living over the years. In the last year or two, we've done a good job in not introducing any revenue measures, reducing existing fees and taxes to reduce any pressures on the cost of living. So this cost of living over the last 8 years, really and truly, has nothing to do with the current administration. It is just a fact that costs have risen over time. So trying to ensure that everyone keeps up with the cost of living, the figure was 3.2%, but inflation has risen by 11% since 2008. So we thought it would be fair to give slightly more than the 3.2%. And if you'll also remember, this July we gave a 2.8 one-time payment to civil servants.
That's right. Yes.
As a way of keeping them abreast with inflation. So we've done the best we could. So the 4%, really and truly, is to ensure that they are staying abreast inflation. Now, 4% is a relative figure. It translates to more absolute dollars increase for higher income brackets and less for lower income brackets. With respect to cost of living adjustment, it probably would not be prudent because people structure their costs, structure their lifestyles around their incomes. So it probably wouldn't be fair in a cost of living adjustment to give 2% at the top and 4% at the bottom because they're all experiencing the same cost of living. But with respect to salary review exercises, that is where I think you should make some differentiation.
Okay, yes. Yeah. Okay, great. And we had an off-air question: will civil servants be receiving any Christmas bonuses? Government don't normally give Christmas bonuses.
Unfortunately, not. We won't be able to do it for the Christmas. But come July 1st, everyone will then receive.
So they'll have Christmas in July. Okay, Mr. Archer, we've gotten to about that time. Give you an opportunity to make any final comments and observations that you may wish.
Yeah, just to say thank you very much for the opportunity to come on the show. Thank you to the listening public for spending the time with us. Thank you very much to everyone who called and made positive comments. And to Mr. Hill, I apologize that I wasn't able to give you the specific answer that you were seeking. But Mr. Connor has given an undertaking to provide the information that you are seeking. And I'm sure that when Mr. Tibbetts has a meeting with the Contractors Association, you will be invited to that, I'm sure. And I'm just happy that we could do what we did for the civil service, and I thank the Lord that He has enabled us to do what we have been doing, and I look forward to us doing even better things.
Again, Mr. Archer, I want to thank you for being on the show, for being so clear in terms of your explanation, because some of the things that we talked about here, your ability to bring them down to the level that the layman, or what we call the man on the street, can understand, and that certainly is helpful, as well, because then, once it is explained like that, people can't go out there and make false statements and misrepresent the facts, when you have laid them out so simply and so clearly to our listening audience. I want to say thank you, as well, for your clarity and your conciseness in terms of your explanation. Folks, I want to remind you that you've been listening to For the Record. I have been your host, Dorit Connor, and my guest in the studio with me this morning was the Honorable Marco Archer, Minister of Finance. I want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers, There is always someone who is less fortunate than we are, and I encourage you to reach out. Put that helping hand out there and assist them. And if you don't want to do that, then you should give to a worthy charity. This is the 1st of December. We're getting closer and closer to Christmas Day, getting more into the Christmas season. And I ask you to think, to concentrate on not so much on those who want, but those who need. That is what the Christmas spirit is all about, and I want you to exercise it in that manner if you can. And we always leave you with the words of Mr. Bill Withers, lean on me. Take care. Continue to listen to Cayman, and we will be back with you on For the Record on Wednesday morning. Have a great day.
Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. For the record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
For the record. For the record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.